Hello, this is Ken Ferrie with this week's Boots in the Field report. Man, we're getting some nice weather. Finish up this year's harvest. Many growers here locally have wrapped up or close to it and they're moving on to fall work. Some of the crop out there yet to the north, but it won't take them long to clean that up as well. As we moved into the May planted corn plots, for the most part, yields have stayed pretty strong in the corn. Have dropped off some in the May beans, but that's kind of expected. The plot crews have had to hammer down this week, taking out a lot of plots, seeing some pretty interesting data. We took out one VRT nitrogen plot, and we looked at basically just two rates, 180 pounds of N versus 150 pounds of N. The yield goal for this field was 230 bushel to the acre. It was planted at 34,000 plants. Based on spring prices, when you ran it through the nitrogen calculator, we came up with a 148 pound recommendation. So we used that. We split the application between dry fertilizer, pre-plant, broadcast, and side dress. So it had three different applications to the 4R. In zone 1, at 180 pounds, we were short of the 230 yield goal. And when we pulled that N rate back to the 150 pound N calculator rate, we lost 15 bushel. So while we were saving $22 worth of N, we lost about $67 worth of yield. While we know 150 pounds wasn't enough, we can't be sure that 180 was either. Zone 1 had an ISNT value of 294 parts per million in the top 2 feet with 2% organic matter. Now in our Crop Tech VRT program, based on yield goal, ISNT, and population and organic matter, we would recommend that Zone 1 be between 190 and 200 pounds of N. In Zone 2, we exceeded the 230 bushel yield goal, but there was no difference between yield of 180 pounds of N and 150 pounds of N. In this zone, we know that 150 was adequate, but we don't know if we could have gone lower than 150 pounds. Now, Zone 2 has an ISNT value of 455 parts per million, organic matter at 4%. And if we put it through our calculator, we'd recommend that you only need a 150 pound rate because the soil is going to supply us with more N in Zone 2. While the N calculator would have been right on in Zone 2, it would have cost us $45 an acre in Zone 1. The problem with this plot is most of the field aligns with Zone 1. If we look at it, at this plot pass by pass, there'd be a lot of noise in it, and it would indicate that we needed more N. But when you break it out by zone, looking at factors like ISNT, organic matter, slope, soil type, you realize the power of VRT nitrogen applications. We had a large planter fertility plot come out this week. Planted in May, this field was in the 250-260 range. We looked at different starter fertilizers and we applied them through the furrow jet. We saw a 13 to 22 bushel difference between the different starters and no starter, so strong response there. In this large plot, we also had a ton of starter additives, some micro packages, as well as different zincs, several biologicals as well. I can tell by the pass numbers that some of the treatments worked and others didn't, but it's going to need to be dissected by zone to get the real picture. So we'll present that zone data in the winter workshops. This year we tested an experimental seed treatment for corn nematodes. We chose 3 fields that have tested high for corn nematodes as well showed up in the yield maps, those zones in the yield map, and we identified the fact that we had high nematode pressure, corn nematode pressure. All 3 plots responded positively to the nematode treatment. The plots were scattered from Waseca to Clinton, and past data shows a range of 7 to 18 bushel yield increase. Now this will get a lot larger when we break it down by zone, looking at areas where the high nematode pressure is versus areas that it's not. This definitely will be one we'll keep our eyes on as it comes to market. We took out another fixed flex plot this week in narrow rows. Had 8 hybrids planted at 24,000 and 36,000. The 24,000 side of that plot averaged 235. It's kind of crazy. And the 36,000 side of that plot at 226. We saw a high of 255 bushel in the 24,000 side of that plot. That's just amazing today what these hybrids can do. Of the 8, 6 hybrids yielded better at 24 and 2 did better at 36. One number was 35 bushel better at 24,000 than at 36. Another hybrid was 12 bushel better at 36 than 24. Now our goal is to capture all the sunlight. In narrow rows, it doesn't take much for some hybrids to capture all the sunlight. All of these plots will go under a magnifying glass when we review all the data. Speaking of that, our hand harvest date is on November 29th, and it's a big part of this data. A lot of helpers makes less work. Hint, hint. We had 2 bean plots this week. Both were planted in May. One involved light tillage. So we looked at no-till, vertical till, and a high-speed disc at a 4-degree angle and an 8-degree angle. The no-till and the vertical till averaged 72 bushel. The 4-degree high-speed disc was 68 bushel. The 8-degree gang angle high-speed disc was 58 bushel. There's 12 replications in this plot, and it held up pass by pass all the way through. This is one of a few times that I've seen tillage make a difference in beans, especially May planted beans. I assume the dry June is playing part in this. We also looked at row spacing in a drill in a May planted beans, planted at 140,000. So there were 30-inch rows, 15-inch rows, and 7.5-inch rows. The 30-inch rows were 64 bushel, the 15-inch rows were 70 bushel, and the 7.5 were 72 bushel. This would fall in line with a lot of past data that we've seen in that 6 to 8 bushel response to narrow rows. I do know the results to this plot was due to the dry weather. It took a long time for the 30-inch rows to close as we watched it with the drone on a weekly basis. Getting a lot of questions pertaining to tillage. Should we do tillage? How deep? What machine? Keep the questions coming if you got them. But I'm going to have Zach post a couple of YouTube videos on our website that answers a big majority of the questions coming in. Take a look at those and they might help you with your answers before you even call in. For non-CTC customers, while you're there at the website, you can register for our Beyond the Basics video series that's going to start here soon, and the virtual Winter College. No podcast next week, as I and some of the staff here will be joining a lot of you guys headed to the woods to try to help control this deer population. We need to do our part to curb this population for our crops and for the safety of our roads. We lost a neighbor here this week involved in an accident with a deer. Please keep him and his family in your prayers. I want to wish all my fellow hunters a safe and bountiful hunt. Bring your hunting stories and pictures to the Hand Harvest Day to share. Everyone here at Crop Tech would like to thank all the veterans out there and their families. It's your service that's made this country so great, and we truly appreciate it. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.